11 Alive News at 5 p.m. starts now.
Breaking news at 5. The clock is ticking until former President Trump surrenders in Fulton County. We have team coverage on how this will impact your travel, the process of being booked at the Fulton County Jail, and what comes next in this already historic case. Good evening, everybody. And in a couple of hours from now, we are expecting the arrival of former President Trump inside the Fulton County Jail. And you are looking live in Newark on the screen next to us as we await the former president's plane to leave and to head for Georgia.
Yeah, his motorcade pulled up about 30 minutes ago or so, and his plane is still there. We think it might be weather related because when we first brought the shot up, there was just a ton of rain there. But this prosecution is actually the fourth criminal case against Trump since March and is expected to yield a historic first, a mugshot of the former president. He is facing 13 counts, all from Fulton County Court. The most serious is violating Georgia's Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, or RICO Act.
We have team coverage for you planned all evening long. We kick things off tonight by sending it to 11 Alive. Jennifer Bellamy, who is live at Hartsfield-Jackson, awaiting the former president's arrival. Jennifer?
Jeff, as you just mentioned, we are expecting the former president to get into the air sometime soon to come and travel here to Atlanta, Georgia, to the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, just over my shoulder to the Signature Airfield, where we are expecting him to land. Now, we aren't sure exactly what time he will arrive here, but what we can tell you is within the last 30 minutes or so, we saw several emergency and law enforcement vehicles arrive to this airfield, including Georgia State Patrol and also Atlanta Police. We've seen several motorcycles and a lot of black vehicles as well. And so we are anticipating that he will arrive at some point soon to turn himself in. We don't know exactly which route he will take from the Atlanta airport to the Fulton County Jail, but we do know is that they don't expect there to be any interruptions out here at the airport. We have seen many flights taking off and landing out here, so no interruptions are expected there. Where we do anticipate there to be some interruptions, some headaches are on the highways and on the roads as the former president travels to the jail. We also know that there's a Falcons football game right now that is set to kick off at 7:30 tonight, so a lot going on in the city as the former president travels here. Andrew Wilson has been tracking those routes and what we can expect out there on the roads, Andrew.
Well, Jennifer, you know, the airport is not very close to the Fulton County Jail, so this motorcade is going to have to make its way up through the city and then eventually up towards that Fulton County Jail. It's about 14.1 miles away from the airport itself. Taking a look down towards the airport again, the former president is expected to arrive at Hartsfield-Jackson. He's going to be taking off from Newark here pretty soon. The ramp closures are likely going to be an issue along the way of the route as the motorcade makes its way through, and we're thinking that it's going to be maybe one of two routes that could be possible here. It's going to make its way up the downtown connector, either west on I-20 over to Joseph E. Lowery Boulevard and then making its way up to the north, or still staying on the downtown connector closer on up towards North Avenue, where it could then cut over to the Fulton County Jail. Again, that's about 14.1 miles. Now, I'm thinking it'll likely go towards Joseph E. Lowery Boulevard. The reason why I say that is because you see how backed up the downtown connector already is, and it's likely just going to get even worse here as we get closer on to the evening commute. Also, those surface streets likely going to be really backed up there, and down near those surface streets, we'll toss things over to Molly Oak. And Molly, I understand you're over near Donald E. Hollowell Boulevard or Park.
Yeah, and only about a block or two from Joseph E. Lowery as well. Now, of course, we don't know which route the former president, will take. But in addition to that rush hour that everyone's going to be dealing with, we also have the Falcons' final preseason game. So just for a certain perspective of where we are, we're about 1.5 miles from the Benz and 1 mile from the jail. We've seen this road kind of consistently getting backed up as traffic continues on through and gets stopped at this light, likely to get worse as we get closer to 6 o'clock. Now, what we do know is Donald Lee Howell intersects the two fastest routes to get there. A law enforcement officer who's worked presidential visits before says Mr. Trump would likely take one of the quickest routes. Now, I also caught up with the former DeKalb County Public Safety Director. He says even though this is a former president's visit, there are security protocols that will go into place the minute his plane touches down.
It will be an event that will, in many ways, certainly halt traffic and impede traffic in and throughout the community. And it's probably best for people to make sure that they stay alerted through the media and through any other sources that they can, to not go into other certain areas, particularly during certain times of the day.
Now, as for just exactly what roads he will take, that's likely not something we'll know until right before it happens. My law enforcement source says it'll be like something we've seen before with other sitting presidents who have come to visit. You see those rolling closures where they go about a mile in advance, close those roads off until the motorcade comes through. Jennifer, over to you.
All right, Molly, thank you so much. And as you can see on your screen right now, this is just some of the law enforcement presence that we are seeing out here at this airfield as we prepare for the former president to make his way here to Atlanta. We are not quite sure if he will be making remarks once he departs from Fulton County Jail after that booking process, but we will be here throughout the evening to keep you updated with the very latest. Jeff and Faith, back to you.
All right, Jennifer, thank you. The focal point of this case is soon going to be the Fulton County Jail on Rice Street.
Yes, so that is where former president will be formally processed. His mugshot is expected to be taken. And that's also where we find 11 Alive's Ron Jones. He is outside of the jail with more on what that scene looks like out there. And I can see it looks like some demonstrators behind you there, Ron.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks out here, but let me tell you something. This is what I love about our country, being a veteran and also a former first responder with the police department, is the freedom of speech, the freedom to protest. This is something you're not going to see in Russia for sure. You're not going to see it in China, and you're not going to see it in Iran. There are passionate protesters here in front of the Fulton County Jail from both sides of the aisle, and we have some video of that to give you a better perspective, because you can't really see what's happening here. There have been some flashes of confrontations where it becomes pretty intense, pretty dicey, foul language, insults from both sides. But the good news here is no violence at all, and that's what we love about that. Hundreds of protesters are now meshed in with the media, so there's a lot of folks here compressed in this area. And when you bring out more protesters, which more than likely we're going to see more as we get closer to the former president showing up here at the Fulton County Jail, when you have protesters and politics, it can cause problems, especially when it comes to security. If you look over my shoulder here, you can see that there are some barriers. We have been told anybody who steps on the other side of that barrier, whether it's a protester or the media, they're going to be arrested because the deputies are standing by. Now, that is a big issue, is security. 11 Alive's Joe Ripley is standing by to talk a little bit more about what's going to take place as more people show up here in front of the jail. Joe?
For the most part, here on the Jefferson Street side of the Fulton County Jail, it's quiet for the most part at the moment. We do expect that could change, especially as former President Trump is just a couple of hours or so away from making his way from the Atlanta airport here to the Fulton County Jail to surrender himself on those charges tied to Georgia's 2020 election. We also understand the jail is set to go under a hard lockdown at that time. No one in, no one out. Here on the Jefferson Street side, we've noticed an uptick, certainly a heightened sense of security and law enforcement compared to earlier in the week. Atlanta Police, Fulton County Sheriff's Office, Georgia State Patrol, and many others all helping to direct traffic and maintain the secure perimeter around the jail. Police have shut down Jefferson Street to car traffic between Marietta Boulevard and Joseph E. Lowry Boulevard. Retired Secret Service agent Ray Moore expects interstates and roads to also shut down as that presidential motorcade makes its way here. And air traffic as well will also be at a standstill around the jail once Trump does arrive.
When former President Trump comes into Atlanta to go be processed, the motorcade route that he's going to come into is going to be secured. When he arrives at the jail, there will be no one, no prisoners, anybody like that in close proximity to him.
And two defendants, including former Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, surrendered here at the Fulton County Jail earlier today. Bonding out did Meadows do, and there are still 8 more defendants, including the former president himself, still have the opportunity to turn themselves in by the deadline of tomorrow at noon. We do expect the president, though, in a couple of hours from now.
All right, Joe, thanks a lot. So let's talk about that. The booking process, what happens when the former president shows up here at the Fulton County Jail. Rebecca Lindstrom has that side of the story for us. Rebecca?
The sheriff has long said that he plans to treat all of these defendants the same as any other. But one thing I have definitely noticed that is different is access. Normally, we can go right up to the door where a person goes in for booking. Instead, we are being held back down the street, all of that likely for security. The district attorney as well has stepped into this process to try to expedite what will happen for these defendants. She has pre-negotiated the terms of their surrender. That still means, though, when they get here, they're going to have to show ID. They will have their picture taken. That's kind of what we refer to as the mugshot. They will be fingerprinted, and traditionally there is a medical questionnaire. Now that serves two purposes. One, if the person doesn't get bail and they're going to be booked into the jail, that helps them understand if there's going to be any medical needs while they're there. That obviously is not the case with any of these defendants thus far. So the other purpose then is just to get more identifying information in case they don't show up for a hearing or for trial. That way they've got weight, height, some other things that they can issue in the search for that person. But again, we are unsure if that medical questionnaire will happen in these cases. There will be some paperwork, though, that they will have to fill out while they're waiting for bail to clear. And former prosecutor Danny Porter says that's another area where you can expect things to be different.
It's going to be unique in that he's not going to stand in line. He's not going to be processed with every other drunk that comes in that night. I suspect there's going to be things like clearing out the intake room or the book-in room. Secret Service will have to be there.
And so Mr. Trump does have bail set at $200,000. He can pay that tonight by cash or a cashier's check, or he can use a bail bondsman, as has been used. Ron.
All right, Rebecca, thanks a lot. Hey, before I toss it back to you, Faith, I just want to let you know that an army of deputies just end up running up the street, up Wright Street. We're trying to figure out what's going on. As soon as we find out, we'll make sure we get it to you.
Ron, thank you so much for breaking it down. And it's great to get his perspective because he was a former officer himself. So, well, before former President Trump took to the skies, there was actually a major development in that case filed by Fulton County District Attorney.
And this proposal would dramatically shift the start of the trial by 5 months. 11 Alive's Savannah Levins and Nick Wooten have been digging into this proposed change in the judicial process.
Yeah, Jeff, this has honestly been kind of a fascinating game of political chicken. You've got Kenneth Chesebro, who is one of the co-defendants in this case, demanding a speedy trial, kind of challenging DA Willis's readiness to try such a big case. Willis called his bluff and said, yeah, you know that March date we were looking towards? How's October 23rd, 5 months earlier instead? And now a judge has signed that, confirming that October 23rd trial date for Chesebro, at least. Want to bring in investigative reporter Nick Wooten. Nick, you've been on the phone with our legal analysts. I mean, what does this do now to Willis's goal or her dream of having all these 19 defendants in the same room? Is this going to happen in October where they're all there?
It puts that wish in serious jeopardy. When Willis filed her response to Chesebro earlier this week, she wanted all 19 in the courtroom. The order that the judge signed earlier this afternoon was only for Chesebro. It's sort of like predicting the outcome of a football game in the first quarter. There's so much stuff that still has to happen. There's jury selection, there's motions, there's appeals. There's a possibility that even Chesebro wouldn't be in the courtroom in October.
And we're looking at Trump looking to sever from this as well, so a lot still to be known, you guys. We'll stay on top of it.
All right, thank you so much for keeping us updated. Now, if you're at home, you want to catch up on all of the stories we've done since these indictments came out last week, we will send you everything you know. We'll send it directly to you. All you have to do is text the word coverage to 404-885-7600.
We are watching radar right now where it is dry here in the Atlanta area, but if you look up toward the north, we have some showers and storms that are rolling through. These have prompted severe thunderstorm warnings now in effect. We have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for Banks, Hall, Jackson, and also White County. Another warning in effect here right along the South Carolina line for Hart County and also Elbert County. A new warning just issued in Dade and Walker County in northwest Georgia. Stay with us. We'll talk about whether or not any of these storms could make it into the metro area later tonight.
And we're learning it could take weeks to identify a child's body found in East Point yesterday, what we know about the investigation, and the possible connection to a missing 2-year-old boy. It's coming up next.